On the agenda tonight, we're going to be discussing the battle that Stevie Ray Vaughan had with his strings on a nightly basis. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So initially I recorded this video about 2 years ago now on Stevie Ray Vaughan and his performance of Texas Flood from the El Macambo, and unfortunately it got blocked, but I didn't notice that, so I'm re-uploading it now with the performance section taken out so that it doesn't get blocked. If you guys want to queue up the original performance video, I'm going to leave the link to that in the description below and also pin it to the top of the comment section. As this video was originally aired 2 years ago, I was on a very restrictive time schedule, fitting them in after work, but as you guys know, over the last year or year and a half, I put a lot more into my nightly videos. I want to give a little bit of background at least before we jump into it, because this performance of Texas Flood was actually from their first tour, and when I say them, I'm talking about Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble. And having this first tour, you've got to watch the video. If you do click on that link in the description below and the one pinned to the top of the comments, you can start to see it from that point of view, that it's the first tour that they did after releasing the album just a week before. So they literally just jumped straight out on the road and played in Europe as well as the USA and Canada, the El Macambo being a venue in Canada. But this performance, to put it in context, it was part of the tour that started in June 1983 and it went all the way through to February 1984. And this would have actually been the next month after they started. So we're talking about July in 1983. Of course, at that time, I was much too young to get into any venue. So it meant that unfortunately I missed out on their performance when they did play in England, in London, and they also played at Reading Festival. So there must be a select group of very lucky people who managed to see Stevie Ray Vaughan live here in the UK in 1983. But without further ado, let's queue up the original analysis video. And if you haven't seen the performance video, it's probably a good idea to click on one of the links below and check that out. And then you can come back here for the analysis. But we'll jump into it now, and I'll see you guys in the comment section. I'm just going to stop it there because that is one hell of an intro to a track. I pretty much always say this when Stevie's playing. He just has the best intros ever. I mean, that went on, 2 minutes, over 2 minutes worth of just solid lead work, great dynamics in there, the way that he starts really understated with the playing and then leaning into it. I think he just come to the mic to do a vocal, but then he takes a step back and thinks, I'm just going to up it another gear. But Stevie's playing, the fact that you can hear how heavy those strings are, it was a major part of Stevie's sound. I know that he did have as high as 13s on that high E string. And the best way that I can describe Stevie's playing is that the strings, being that heavy gauge, they don't want to be bent too much. They don't want to be manipulated too much because they're heavy. And Stevie had the ability to absolutely manipulate those strings however he wanted to, but the strings didn't want it. So you almost hear the battle of tension and power, and that's what Stevie had. Anyone else who picked up Stevie's guitar would never be able to get it to sound like this guy could get it to sound, purely because of physiology. Some guys have got smaller hands, haven't got as strong hands, so trying to bend a 13 on that high E is going to be really difficult for most people, but Stevie just had that power. He had, I've mentioned in other videos, the freakishly strong hands that he had, to the point where I've actually paused a video to see how thick his fingers are, and he just absolutely manhandles these strings. Another thing is Stevie's vibrato. He's absolutely got it nailed down. I say this about all the top players. He's got that really nice slow wide vibrato if he wants it, but also he can just increase that frequency to give that even more angst coming out of the guitar. That faster vibrato just really ups that dynamic, and almost the distressed sound of the guitar is trying to resist all of these bends and all of this vibrato that's going on. So he really does give the guitar a sound that is so unique, and certainly Stevie's one of of those players who has his own sound altogether, and he doesn't need a ton of effects to get it. Great lines that he throws together, technically absolutely spot on. The right hand and the left hand absolutely synchronized to the nth degree. Some of the lines he's throwing in there, lots of hammer-ons, pull-offs. We've got pentatonic stuff here, of course, but blues scale and major scale coming in there as well. Great with slides. I don't think there's any part of Stevie's playing that you can say needed working on. There's no weak elements here. This is just absolute top level blues, but his playing was just absolutely insane on a totally different level. The way that Stevie plays these chords, but also vibratos full chords as well. So he's manipulating those strings, 3 or 4 strings at once, to get that vibrato on the chord. So really cool to be adding that in with such heavy strings as well. Again, it's going to take a lot of effort, but you can see the way that he really does shake that guitar to get that vibrato. Just really manhandles those strings. A lot of people who would play with these strings, with this gauge of string, they're really heavy. Getting any kind of wide vibrato will be really, really tough. A lot of people would not be able to make the vibrato wide because of the tension on the string doesn't allow it. It needs such force in order to get that wide vibrato. So Stevie just thrown the guitar behind his back. But the difficult part about this, obviously playing behind your back is going to be a lot more difficult anyway, because he's trying to make sure that his shirt and his trousers aren't going to be resting on the strings, because it would just kill the sound. What I love about this is the transition from playing in front to behind, because you could see that he's got to remove the strap on the right hand side of the guitar, on the bottom of the body of the guitar. He's then got to flip it behind him, and then he's got to reattach that strap, and it all happens within a second or a couple of seconds. But he does it so seamlessly that he's then back into playing lead. But just doing that so quickly, it's so well rehearsed and so professionally done that I think people don't really notice how difficult it is to do that quickly. Take off your strap, get it behind your back and strap it back up again. And it's so well done. The fact that his playing then doesn't miss a beat afterwards as well. Just absolutely classic, showmanship, but also ability of playing. There are plenty of players who do a lot of showmanship and aren't necessarily that good at playing the guitar, whereas Stevie was just absolutely a top level player with showmanship as well, just thrown in spades. And we just want to see when he then puts the guitar back in front of himself, just to see how he navigates that. And there we go, he just swings it around so that it's now come behind him, and now both of the parts of the strap are on his left-hand side. So the guitar's just resting on his shoulder. So again, it's a unique position to have that guitar in, because the strap isn't now over his right shoulder, it's now over his left shoulder. Another thing you might have noticed in there were the bends that Stevie was doing when the guitar was behind his back. He also does it when he's got the guitar in a standard position, but he'll catch another string underneath his bending finger. So you're effectively bending 2 strings at the same time and bending them both up. And you can try this if you do play guitar on that high E string. If you bend up 15th fret of the high E and you catch, or at least collect, that 15th fret of the B string underneath your finger as well, and then hit those 2 together, you'll get that harmony sound. It's not quite harmony, it's really distressed. It gives a distressed sound to the bend because you've got both strings ringing out at the same time. And that's how Stevie gets that sound. It just so happens that in this case, he was doing it behind his back, but I'd suggest people try and get it nailed in front of your body in the standard position before trying it behind your back. Just to give a quick example of what I mentioned at the end there, when Stevie's playing 2 strings at the same time, if you're playing a lead line and you're just playing it very clean, and say for example I go like that, the way that Stevie throws it together is by catching the G string underneath his second finger. So when he bends up, he's getting 2 notes at the same time. Like that. So that is the sound. Like I said, it's a little bit more distressed, but once you've got that in there and those, you can still get into your clean playing if you want to, but it's something that Stevie did. He had such power in those hands. He could hold down a couple of strings, probably a few strings if he wanted to. When I said about him playing full chords and putting vibrato into those as well, he just had total mastery of that fretboard. But this is one of those videos that I wanted to re-upload after it got blocked because Stevie's string gauge was so heavy, it just gave it that sound of them being wrestled and was a huge part of his overall sound. Anyway, thank you guys for suggesting this video for me to take a look at 2 years ago. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!